The crystalline throne of Drakthar had remained empty beside Empress Ilana for 3 centuries. Not because she lacked suitors. The galaxy's most powerful warlords, merchant princes, and noble houses had sent their finest, but because none survived the trial of flame long enough to even speak their vows. Ilana's scales shimmered like molten copper as she reclined on her throne, watching yet another suitor from the Confederation of Claw incinerate before completing the traditional walk across the ceremonial bridge. His ashes joined those of 17 others who had attempted the trial that year alone. Your Radiance. Her Chancellor Vormalik bowed low, his own crimson scales dulled with age. Perhaps we should reconsider the trial's intensity? Ilana's amber eyes narrowed. The trial has stood for 5,000 years, Chancellor. Any male who cannot withstand dragonfire for 30 seconds is too weak to rule beside me. The Drakthar Empire was not built by the timid. What neither of them said aloud was the truth they both knew. Ilana had calibrated the flames herself, setting them just beyond what any known species could endure. 3 centuries of solitude was preferable to another century of disappointment, with a mate who saw only her crown, never her. The human delegation arrived on a Tuesday. Ilana had almost forgotten they were coming. Earth was a recent addition to the Galactic Council, their species barely a century into faster-than-light travel. They had requested an audience to discuss trade routes through the outer spiral, mundane, matters her economic advisors could handle, but protocol demanded she receive their ambassador. Personally, James Carver stepped into her throne room wearing a simple gray suit, not the ornate robes or military regalia most ambassadors favored. His brown hair was touched with silver at the temples and a thin scar traced his left cheekbone. He walked with a slight limp. Old injury, Ilana's practiced eye noted. What struck her wasn't his appearance. It was that when their eyes met, he smiled. Not the calculating smile of a courtier or the nervous grimace of someone terrified before a predator. A genuine warm smile that reached his eyes, crinkling their corners, as if he'd encountered an old friend rather than an alien empress who could incinerate him with a thought. Your Radiance, he said, his accent charmingly rough around her language's sibilance. Thank you for seeing us. I'm Ambassador James Carver. Ilana found herself sitting up straighter. Ambassador, I understand you wish to discuss trade routes. Actually, James said, and his smile turned slightly mischievous, I was hoping to discuss something else entirely. I'd like to request entry into your trial of flame. The throne room fell silent. Chancellor Vormalik's jaw literally dropped open. 2 of her guards' tail spikes rattled in alarm. Ilana leaned forward. You understand what you're asking? The trial has killed beings far more durable than humans. Your species' tolerance for heat is terrible, yes, James agreed cheerfully. We're basically hairless apes from a temperate world. Fire is definitely not our natural habitat. Then why? The question escaped before Ilana could stop it, genuine curiosity overriding imperial dignity. James's expression grew serious. I spent 20 years in the Terran Marines, Your Radiance. Fought in the Proxima Wars, the Kepler Rebellion. Lost a lot of good people. He touched the scar on his face absently. When I retired, I studied xenobiology. Learned everything I could about other species. Read about the Drakthar Empire, about you specifically. And what did you learn? That you set that trial to be impossible. That you've been alone for 300 years because everyone who came before saw a crown, not a person. That humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. He grinned again. Also that we're too stupid to quit when the odds are against us. It's kind of our thing. Despite herself, Ilana laughed, a sound that startled her own guards. You're either the bravest human I've ever met or the most foolish. Generally both, ma'am. The trial was set for dawn. Ilana stood beside the bridge of flames, watching the human ambassador prepare. He'd stripped to a simple white shirt and pants, had his hands wrapped in some kind of thermal fabric his people had developed. You can still withdraw, she told him quietly, surprised by how much she wanted him to survive. James looked at her, and that smile appeared again. Your Radiance, I didn't come here thinking I could endure what others couldn't through some special human toughness. I came here because I read that your people value courage, determination, and the willingness to face impossible odds. The trial measures durability, not courage. Maybe, James acknowledged. But I also read that the Empress controls the flame's intensity. Ilana felt her scales flush warmer. You think I would show favoritism? No, he said simply. I think you're tired of testing bodies when what you want to measure is spirit. I think you want someone who'll walk into those flames knowing they'll burn, and do it anyway because you're worth it. He was right, of course. Dangerously perceptive for someone she'd just met. James stepped onto the bridge. Ilana ignited the flames with a thought, and he immediately began to burn. Not his flesh, not yet, but his clothes smoldered. The thermal wrappings on his hands steamed. His face contorted in pain, sweat evaporating from his skin almost instantly. But he walked forward. One step, then another. At 10 seconds, his shirt caught fire. At 15, his skin reddened, blistering. At 20, he fell to one knee and Ilana's hand moved to extinguish the flames. She couldn't watch this. Couldn't let him. But James forced himself back up and kept walking. At 28 seconds, he collapsed 3 feet from the end of the bridge, unconscious from pain and heat exhaustion. Ilana extinguished the flames instantly and was beside him in a heartbeat, her personal physician already rushing forward. She cradled his burned, barely breathing form, her own eyes stinging with unfamiliar moisture. Fool, she whispered. Brave, magnificent fool. His eyes fluttered open, focus slowly returning. When he saw her face above his, that impossible smile appeared again, though it clearly hurt him. Did I make it? No, Ilana said honestly. You were 3 feet short and 2 seconds early. Damn. He coughed weakly. Told you. Humans are terrible at knowing when to quit. James Carver, Ilana said formally, even as tears tracked down her scaled cheeks. You failed the trial of flame. His face fell with disappointment, but she continued, her voice breaking with something between laughter and sobs. You succeeded at something far more difficult. You reminded an empress that courage matters more than invulnerability, that showing vulnerability requires more strength than any armor. She looked up at her shocked chancellor. Prepare a wedding ceremony. The traditional kind with no flames involved. Your radiance, but the trial was designed, Ilana interrupted, to find someone who would risk everything for me. I believe we found him. James's smile, even through his pain, could have lit the entire throne room. Does this mean I get a second date? Ilana laughed again, the sound echoing through the palace, a sound not heard in 300 years. Humanity, I think, is going to be very good for the Empire. As the medical team carried James away, already treating his burns with advanced nano-regeneration technology, Ilana stood on the bridge of flames and did something she hadn't done in centuries. She extinguished them completely and ordered the bridge redesigned, not as a trial of endurance, but as a simple walkway where two people might stroll together. After all, she'd finally found someone who smiled at the dragon, not just the crown, and in the end, that was worth more than all the fire in the galaxy. End.